Hi, today I thought I could talk about forgiveness, and I'm rather excited to give this talk because it's been about 2 weeks since I've recorded a YouTube video. And with forgiveness, I think for this talk, I want to focus a little bit more on short-term forgiveness because I really feel like short-term and long-term forgiveness are almost like two different things where short-term forgiveness, when I was thinking about a metaphor, I feel like it's almost like if we're a flower, when someone hurts us, that flower closes again, and then we can essentially be the sunlight and actually move into forgiveness rather quickly afterwards and help that flower open up again. But with major losses, major traumatic events, I feel like it's a little bit of a different process where we might something really harmful happens, like let's say someone cheats on us, someone kills like a loved one, like something really serious, a major relationship that we have even falls apart, or a business that we poured a ton of time and energy into gets taken away, or ends up not making it, right? Like a major loss, and maybe someone caused that business to fall apart or backstabbed us. That's going to be a little bit of a different process where instead of like the flower closing and then we can be the sunlight to reopen up the petals of that flower, it's almost like we're growing a whole new flower, and we have to move through the pain of the loss or the grief cycle, which could take a couple years depending on what we lost or what was taken from us or who betrayed us and how deeply they hurt us by doing that. And we have to move through the pain and the grief, which you can almost think of like a new seed, like growing a whole new flower, and the pain it's moving through you can imagine as a metaphor of moving through the soil and eventually forming a flower and blooming. But that's typically, for this type of flower, that's typically like a couple year process depending on the loss. And we might even feel like we move through the grief cycle and it still might be a couple more years before we feel like we can forgive the person that harmed us when it's like a deep traumatic event. And so while I think I'm going to touch a little on both short-term forgiveness and long-term forgiveness, I'm going to focus more on short-term forgiveness for this talk. And I also want to highlight that I think it's important to forgive people, because if you're not forgiving someone, it's almost like you're holding on to the pain of the original event. Like you saying, I can't believe this person did this, I hate them, fuck them, right? And holding a grudge or animosity or being vengeful or spiteful whenever you see that person is essentially reacting from a place of pain. It's not reacting from a place of love, kindness, and respect. And it's actually trapping the pain that person caused you in your body. And it's preventing God or the universe from really being able to help you heal that pain. And so when you forgive someone, it's almost like you're giving the pain of the original event over to a higher power, over to your angels, your guides, to God, to heal it on your behalf. And the way that God knows you're ready for healing is you're in alignment with forgiveness. And if we're going through a major traumatic event or a major loss, right, recognizing that I'm not doing anything wrong by not being in a place of forgiveness with this person, I'm just moving through the soil and I'm growing a whole new flower, and it's okay for me to feel hurt, me to feel triggered when someone even mentions that person's name, or to feel rather reactive whenever I touch into that wound, because it was a major event that happened, and that's normal, right? And so with short-term forgiveness, the goal is maybe I feel the vengefulness, the spitefulness, the deep hurt of I hate this person, fuck them, for a couple hours, and then we move into, okay, can I send this person some healing, right? Whether that's praying for their healing, thinking about them and putting our hand on our heart and just saying I love you over again, like I love you, I love you. as a way of giving that person the opposite of what they gave us, because that is the only way we're ever going to move into a community or a world that is more healed, that is more together, that is more connected, where there's actually the level of connection and community needed to create an environment of world peace. And so forgiveness is a cornerstone of community and togetherness. And if we really want community in our life and deep relationships, we have to orient towards for little ruptures, we have to orient towards I'm willing to repair, or I am willing to at least have a conversation with this person and see how I feel afterwards, rather than immediately going, this person's a demon, I'm never talking to them again, I can't believe they did that. Because most of the time that's our pain trying to influence and make choices through us, rather than us being rational or logical, or actually aligning ourselves with consciousness and interacting with others in a conscious way that hurt us. And the caveat for that is if we are if we're in a relationship with someone, whether a friendship or a partner, that's abusive, which means they consistently do things that are hurtful, and they're actively trying to hurt me. Right? Because there's many people out there who hurt people unknowingly, and then there's people that are a little bit more sociopathic, or you could even call narcissistic, who actively try and hurt and dominate people as a way of making others feel inferior so they can feel superior. And right, so if we're in a dynamic with someone where someone has repetitively and is intentionally trying to hurt us, that's a time to sever ties with that person, let that person go, and not speak to them again. And we don't need to give them a closure conversation, because if they're actively trying to hurt us, they're saying, I'm not in the consciousness to be able to reflect about my actions at all. And so if you brought up all the things I do that are awful or hurtful or harmful, right, I'm just going to take it as another reason to attack you, rather than say I'm sorry and reflect about how I could have been differently, because that's only capable for someone who's acting rational, and people that are actively and intentionally trying to hurt you are living in irrationality, are living in their fantasies about who they are rather than how they actually treat people. And so with forgiveness, right, in order to get to forgiveness, you have to be willing to give, and it's giving people the opposite of what they gave you. And that's really why it's important that no matter how other people are showing up, I'm standing for what I value. And there is going to be, maybe like 4% of the time, there is going to be a moment where you might need to be angry or ferocious in order to protect yourself or protect a child or protect someone you care about. That is a part of our human experience that sometimes can be conscious, but it shouldn't be like an everyday thing or even every couple of weeks, right? If I have to do that every couple of weeks, that's something for me to look at. Am I around the wrong person, or am I just reactive and calling it conscious when I'm really actually dysregulated and taking out my emotional dysregulation on those around me? Like, those are two very different things. And really, I mean, in my life, the amounts of times where I've had to like get more ferocious or like be more in an angry like tone, yelling at someone, is like maybe once every couple of years. Like, it's very not common. And also, I mean, I would say actually it hasn't really happened in the last like 4 or 5 years from my memory. And but there is a difference for me when I think about that. There is a difference between that and being passionate and heated about, hey, you're not you're not being respectful to me, and I have been passionate about making sure that I'm protecting my innocence in front of another person. And so it's a little bit nuanced. And so recognizing, right, there really, and even that of being passionate, like protecting my innocence, which I guess is pretty similar to having to be more ferocious or as a way of protecting ourselves. I mean, that's only happened once in the last couple of years. So recognizing that if we're around the right people, we really don't have to lean into our ferocious rage typically that often, and recognizing that if we want to get to forgiveness with short-term ruptures, the way to do it is being willing to give ourselves and the person involved the opposite of what they gave us, which that means in the moment, right, if someone's starting to be mean, right, that's a good time to be like, hey, that was hurtful. And this either needs to like a shift, or I'm going to remove myself from the situation, or to be direct with the person. Hey, like that didn't feel good for me to receive. Like, what's going on? Are you having a bad day? Like, are good things to bring up if we catch it in the moment. And most people, I think a lot of times we don't catch it in the moment. And so if we don't catch it in the moment, the question is, one, when I feel hurt by someone's actions, that doesn't mean I need to go have and I didn't catch it in the moment, usually it's good to give like a day or two space before I go out and try and have a conversation with this person about, hey, that was hurtful, or hey, that really disappointed me, and like to have a dialogue with them, because the day or two space allows all the emotion that kind of like poking of maybe a more wounded part, or maybe a more insecure part. When we give, it allows those emotions to die down, and then we can address the person from neutrality, which is a great way to not have arguments in your life, is when you cannot allow your emotions to sway you so much when you're communicating with others. And the best way to do that is when someone triggers you, and let's say you didn't catch it in the moment, is not to just go rush off and have a conversation with that person as soon as you realize, oh, I feel kind of hurt after that conversation, but is to allow a day or two for those emotions to die down. And then if we feel like that person can receive our feedback, right, then going to have a conversation with them. But if we want to align ourselves with forgiveness, we have to align ourselves with, I stand for what I value no matter how others treat us, which means I lead with kindness, respect, compassion, empathy, right? No matter how someone else shows up in my life. And if I need to set a boundary with a person, I set the boundary, but I do it kindly and respectfully, rather than fighting fire with fire. Because anytime you fight fire with fire, you are taking the hurt that person is projecting onto you, and you are essentially projecting it right back at them, and you're actually becoming more unconscious and allowing unconsciousness to have more sway and pull over you, because you're now matching that person's energy and frequency rather than staying in your power of I'm conscious and respectful, and not giving your power away of, oh, this person's being mean to me, let me be mean right back to them. Because, right, what did you just become? Mean. And what is mean? Unconsciousness, pain, hurt. And if we really want to see this world heal, we have to be someone that stands for the opposite of mean, which is respect, which is kindness, which is love. And it's okay to feel vengeful and spiteful, but it's one thing to feel that, and it's another thing to then go act that out with another person. And right, we can feel it, but we don't want to go acting it out with another person, because then our feelings are now, that vengefulness and spitefulness, as soon as we choose to act it out, is now having more power over us. And we also don't want to live in vengefulness, spitefulness, anger, rage, and aggression, right? All day, every time, all the time, because the more it's okay to touch those feelings and it's okay to feel those feelings for maybe a couple hours. But if you live there, those feelings only grow. And it's when people talk about in spirituality, they say where your focus goes is what grows within you. And then people go, oh, I can't feel vengefulness and spitefulness because that will grow. And the nuance to that is that it only grows when you live there, right? If you actually touch your vengefulness and spitefulness and even go, let me create some art about this. Let me make an anger journal where I just wish the awfulest things on this person that hurt me. And then after I do that, I go, may all these things I wish on this person only bring greater healing for them and me, and may all these words be returned back to the light. Right? If we did something like that, we're actually pulling that vengefulness and spiteful out of us. And when we're expressing it, we might feel it a little deeper. It's the feeling of we're actually transmuting it. But when we are cycling and being in a loop of, I can't believe this person did this, fuck them, I hate them, and living there, day after day after day after day, when it's been it was not that, when it was like a smaller rupture, right? With major ruptures, like major traumatic events, we might live there a little bit longer before we find our way out of it. But for little ruptures where someone's just mean or said something a little hurtful, if you live there, you're actually then starting to feed that emotion if you're never coming out of it. And so that's one of the greatest things we can do in emotional regulation is when I allow myself to feel the heavy feelings, but then I do something to give me a state change, whether that's expressing that feeling in a healthy way through art, or whether that's just taking time to talk about a friend and forget about it, or maybe it's a friend we trust and we can talk about the experience we just had, or maybe we just go, okay, I'm feeling this feeling, but I'm gonna go live the rest of my day, and I'm gonna try and do things that actually pick up my mood, like listen to a couple of my favorite songs, or make a really delicious meal for myself, or go out and go for swims is a great way to kind of wash away the heaviness of the day. And when we are when we can titrate between our feelings is actually when we start to have mastery, or even a little control over our feelings, where we're able to transmute our feelings rather than giving all our time and attention to that feeling, and that feeling then has power over us and influences our words and actions, right? And that's going to be a little different for short-term ruptures rather than long-term ruptures, where when someone does something hurtful, it might take us a couple days or maybe even a couple of weeks to really come out of the vengefulness or spitefulness, or we might find ourselves continuously ping-ponging into that vengefulness and spitefulness with a major traumatic event. And can we allow that to be okay, but continuing to eventually either expressing the feeling in a healthy way, or pulling us out of that feeling and trying to pick up our mood a little by doing something we really enjoy, which is a way of helping taking our power back from the feeling we're going through. And so, I don't know, I don't think I've mentioned this yet, but with forgiveness, the way to actually embody that is to give. And it's why if you broke up the word forgiveness, the word is for and give. And the more you are actually able to give, the opposite of what someone gave you is the more you're going to start to live in forgiveness, which means almost like a portal of transmutation, where it doesn't even, where the time it takes for you to move through pain someone caused you and back into love, acceptance, and compassion for this other person gets shorter and shorter by your willingness to, one, stand in your values no matter how someone is showing up, and two, after the event has occurred, I send this person healing. I pray for this person's healing. I send them love. Right? And or even can I focus on the fond memories I had of this person? Because when you're focusing on the fond memories you shared with a person, it's almost like you're re-experiencing that experience, and it's aligning you more in love than the pain that person caused you, and it's helping break that pain's hold over you, which is an interesting perspective. And so with forgiveness, it's really important to give, and it's really important to even be generous. And I would even say generosity is like the oil of the door of forgiveness. And the more you are generous in your life, even if it's just kind words, and it doesn't mean that, oh, I went through this major event, traumatic event, let me go give away all my possessions and embody generous, and it'll move me into forgiveness right away. No, that's not it, right? That's just running away from our pain, right? It's like, can I be a little bit, it's not a lot of bit of generosity, but can I just be a little bit more generous with the people in my life, whether that's kind words of love, which is going to align me in greater love, or it's even, maybe it is even I make someone I care about like a dessert, and I go over and bring it over to their home, or I give the homeless person on the street a couple more dollars than I typically do, right? Even like little acts of generosity will help you move into forgiveness a little bit quicker, because it's aligning you in love. And it's helping open up those petals of your heart a little bit more when you're giving unconditionally, or giving without attachment of how that person is going to scratch your back next. And that kind of moves, and that kind of talk moves into the direction I wanted this talk to move into, which was about titration. And so when we have little ruptures in our life, it's so important to orient towards repair. And if it's someone we generally are excited to see and adds value to our life, and let's say they're having a bad day and they say something that's hurtful, or they poke at an insecurity we have and we feel hurt afterwards, but they weren't even trying to be hurtful. The question is, one, can I address it with them? Do they seem like someone who could handle a conversation and just say, hey, I feel really insecure about this. It would feel good if you didn't tease me about it. Or a deeper thing, or if they were a little mean, hey, that was mean and hurtful, and I just wanted to make you aware of it so that doesn't happen again, because it didn't feel good for me to receive that, right? And when we have a conversation like that with someone, do they go, oh, sorry, I didn't know, and that won't happen again? Or do they go, what are you talking about? You're just making things up, right? And are they in denial? Because denial is unconsciousness, but when people can't own things in their life, it's also saying, hey, they're not someone that can really handle depth of vulnerability, because really, in order to be vulnerable, you have to embrace the full human. And that's so, like, when we're thinking about repair, right, recognizing that every human is kind of like a rose with a beautiful flower and also thorns. And some humans are going to have more thorns than others. And some humans we're going to keep on getting poked by that human. Okay, we go, okay, I can't spend time with that flower anymore, right? And maybe I have a conversation and I tell them why, at least. If there's someone that we were trying to build a friendship or a relationship together of some sorts, it's always a good idea to do that. But recognizing no one is perfect and everyone has thorns, and even the most incredible spiritual teachers, which, you know, I'm just getting started as a teacher, but someone else that we really admire, I mean, I think I'm pretty good, but someone else we really admire, recognizing they're human and they're still on their healing journey, and they got flaws. If you really spend time with them, they got flaws like just like anyone else. And so recognizing it's important I focus towards repair in my life, right? If it's someone that I enjoy typically spending time with, and someone that we had a lot of love together and really enjoy each other's company, or right, it's just someone I'm excited to go see typically, it's important to orient towards repair, because no one is perfect and everyone has thorns, and sometimes those thorns are going to poke you, even for the people that really focus on healing. And for me, like, I am not perfect, like, and I'm not going to pretend to be perfect. And I hope that, like, in my YouTube videos, I show that I'm not perfect a little, because I really want to be. I'm not some special enlightened being. I'm a human, and I'm on my healing journey just about anyone else. And I've gotten triggered in the past and not handled it the best. It's something that you know, sometimes you realize, oh, sometimes I'm not aware of my trigger until I do it the wrong way, or till I step in the puddle and go, wow, that was not the right response in that moment. And that's a journey that every human goes through. And so recognizing when I orient towards repair, I'm actually aligning myself in forgiveness, and I'm allowing greater depths to open up in my relationships, because I'm not cutting people out the first moment that they make a little slip up, because everyone makes mistakes. Literally everyone. Literally even people that obsess about healing make mistakes all the freaking time. And so it isn't so much about people. I need to find people that are perfect, but it's more about, can I love someone even when they're not perfect? And can I work to be able to have relationships that can hold my imperfection and this other person's imperfections, rather than not wanting to look at their imperfections, or trying to become so perfect in myself that I never say something wrong, or never don't show up the best. And the goal is to try our best, not to be perfect. And when we're trying to be perfect, we're usually not acknowledging our darkness, which is when that darkness actually has more power over us, right? The most unconscious people in spirituality are often going to tell you, oh, I don't have an ego, or, oh, I'm an enlightened person, and I met my soulmate when I was 5. It's like, okay, let's rein that in a little bit. And there are people, you know, born with more of a purpose than others. And some teachers will say, I've been training in spirituality my whole life, and I've been talking to my guides my whole life. And recognizing people like that maybe aren't necessarily unconscious, but they're moving from the top down. And some people are born grounded, and they're moving the top up. And so if you can't hear your guides or angels, you might just be on the other side of the coin, and not less than, or not get missing life, right? Some people, and sometimes the sacrifices people had to be able to hear their guides and angels was rather traumatic, awful childhood, getting crushed regularly, barely survived it. And so recognizing, you know, it's not necessarily that I'm doing anything right or wrong by not being super spiritual since I was 4 years old. I might just be on a little bit of a different journey. And in truth, just because I feel like I'm not always the best at hearing my guides, don't mean they aren't with me and dropping inspired ideas into my mind, or even helping pull me in the right direction when I need a little guidance. I might be a little less aware of it than other people. And really, I think a lot of the times the people that talk about hearing their guides since they were 4 were just more aware of how their guides helped them. Not that they were like better at being spiritual than other people. They were just a little bit more aware of it, or maybe they were a little evolved psychically, but really had a lot more to work on in the lower, a lot more to work on being in the body, right? Where some people are more in the body and have a little bit more to work on psychically. And so I just say all that to, you know, hopefully that brings some clarity. And so with forgiveness, just to finish out the point I was trying to hit on, is like titrate, right? Orient towards repair. If someone does something that was hurtful, give it a day or two. If they can handle a conversation, great, go talk to them about it. If you feel like they can't handle a conversation with it, okay, doesn't mean you need to cut that person out. It might just be, okay, I'm mindful of they did something that was a little hurtful, and I might just need to see this person less, right? That's really how I live my life, is like, okay, I like very rarely do I ever cut someone out, right? If I enjoy spending time with someone, I'm incredibly forgiveness. I give people second chances. It's like, oh, they must have just been having a bad day. But recognizing how do people regularly show up? And if they're showing up a little, if they're doing something mean and hurtful, right? That's just something I take note of, and then maybe I give that person a couple week or a month space, and I go see them again and say, okay, does it feel better to hang out with them, or they keep on doing the shitty thing? Or they're just keep on being a little unkind or mean or poking at insecurities, right? And then just taking that into note. And if someone is repetitively making you feel hurt, then it's like, okay, I have a conversation with them and make them aware. And if I haven't had a conversation from the get-go because I don't feel like they could handle it, right? This is all like nuance to relationships. Some people you're like, oh yeah, they could totally handle a conversation. Let me just go talk to them about it. Other people are like, it's kind of a distant friend. I'm just going to let it go. I'll give them a little space, see them in a month or a couple weeks, and see, do they continue to do the mean or hurtful thing, or was that they just having a bad day, right? And if they continue to do the mean, hurtful thing, okay, now I have a conversation with them about it, right? Because it's either I have a conversation or I can't be their friend anymore. How do they handle the conversation, right? That's the step. Okay, do they handle it well or do they handle it not well? And then we titrate our relationships that way. And for me, like, I prioritize the people that light me up and excite me and are the easiest for me to spend with. Those are the people I make the most time with in my life. And the people that are a little bit harder for me to be around or are not taking the best care of themselves are people I see less. It doesn't mean I don't see them. It doesn't mean I wouldn't go out to dinner with them if they asked, or might even, for me, ask to go get dinner with them every now and then, right? And so recognizing that this doesn't have to be so much of an all or nothing. And usually when we're relating to life from an all or nothing perspective is like when we're trying to hurt people back for how they hurt us. And like when I used to live with my parents, like I want to say this as a caveat is like, I think with family, we can be a little bit, like for me, I tend to be a little bit more lenient with how my family shows up than like friends, right? Because family we're born with and they've lived a lot more life with us than other people. And so it's like, okay, like even if they're not going to be perfect, doesn't mean that I have to never talk to them again, right? I can just not reach out to them that often. And every now and then, oh, it's kind of nice to get dinner with them, right? And so that's how I like friends like family gets a lot of leeway. Friends get a little bit more leeway, and then romantic partners, which I've talked about, I haven't really had any. But if you are in a romantic relationship, I mean, I think it makes a lot of sense of, right, it shouldn't be hard, and it shouldn't be this person's regularly negative, irritable, hard to be around, right? It's like, okay, that might be a good sign this person's either, I should move them back into the friend area, or I should just stop being in relationship with them. But can I have a conversation with them about it at least, right? For most, unless it's like abusive, then, maybe we just need to cut them out and not talk to them. And you're all going to have to like trust your guidance. But the thing to really orient is repair and allowing people to have second chances. And with family, maybe we give a little bit more second chances than we do with friends or with romantic partners. But I brought up family because, I used to live with my parents, and when I was living with them, there would be times my mom would do things and that would feel hurtful. And it wasn't like she was trying to be hurtful. She just sometimes is a little emotionally reactive. And I would say in my head, I'm moving to Florida, I'm never talking to you again. And realizing now that those were the words of pain, right? And if I had done that, that would have been cutting her just how she cut me, like with something that didn't feel nice, or by being a little hard on me or whatever, focusing more on what I was doing wrong than what's my good qualities, like typical. I feel like a lot of our parents do that. for most people. And and recognizing it's like, okay, like I can just spend less time with this person, right? If they're not someone that's supportive, especially if they're family, especially if someone, they're like a sibling or a mom and dad, like those people deeply care about you, even if they have funny ways of showing it. And it's like, if they have funny ways of showing it, most of the time if we give them more space, it's actually what's going to be the most conscious response for us and that other person, and leading with the value of respect and kindness rather than trying to cut that person back with a boundary, right, which can be just as hurtful when it's set sharply. And that's something I think oftentimes people aren't aware of, is like boundaries can cut, and they can be incredibly hurtful, and they can leave that person reeling that they thought you cared about them, and then you just ghosted them and never talked to them again. Oh, like now they're reminded of their unworthiness and that people don't care about them because the people they really loved and trusted just cut them out of their life for no reason, or cut them out of their life and they don't even know why, and they're reeling from it. Something I've experienced multiple times with friends. and so yeah, it's like okay, if boundaries cut, unless someone is actively intentionally trying to hurt me, right, it might be better just to give that person space. And if they're actively trying to hurt me, okay, maybe then I cut that person out and I ghost them because they wouldn't be able to handle a conversation. And if I feel unsure if they could handle a conversation, most people aren't psychopaths, most people aren't sociopathic, and maybe I give them the benefit of the doubt, right? That's kind of aligning with forgiveness. And if I feel really sure, okay, right, I've given them more than enough chances and they continue to be hurtful towards me, okay, right? I know through experience, and it's the only way we really get to know people or really get to know what is the right choice is through experience. But if we lead with repair, lead with second chances, a lot of the time that's going to lead us in the right direction, and it's going to allow greater depth to open up in our relationships, because we'll be relating to people from their humanness, not our ideas of them. And when we're relating to ideas of people, when we're relating to our ideas of people, we tend to relate to people in all or nothing, which is, I either think this person's amazing, or like in dating, right? I either go, this person is either going to be my next partner and I'm going to be absorbed in them, or I never talk to this person again, which is crazy. And it's like, that's one of the reasons why there isn't good community on this planet, is we're all trying to date and have sex with each other and not oriented towards community. And it's like, if you can stop relating to people from all or nothing, and even like, instead of like going on dates, what would it be like? Can I build community in my life, right? Can I build relationships that have meaning rather than trying to find a partner? Because it's actually, I think it's in our heads is often backwards. Like if you built community, right, that would be the foundation to be able to learn how to handle relationships well, to then be able to handle your deepest love or your romantic relationship, which is going to be closer and more intimate, and there's going to be more at stake than if you try and find that romantic partnership and think that person's going to be your community, right? Those are two very different ways of looking at that. And so recognize, and can I, instead of constantly trying to like use the other sex or the same sex, depending on our sexual orientation, to try and meet our sexual needs, it's like, no, can I form relationships with people, and can I build relationships with even people I'm attracted to based on safety and trust? Because that's actually what we're going to need to do, that in order to be able to have good boundaries then with the right person we meet that's meant to be a romantic partner. So that way when we're like dancing with people or cuddling with people, we're able to hold the boundary of, this is just a friend, I'm in this beautiful romantic partnership, right? And you do that by prioritize building community first, and then usually that partnership is brought to us, which, we all have different stories, and maybe we're in a relationship and then trying to find community. I'm not going to say that truth is across the board, but it should be, if you're single, it should be how you should be orienting is, okay, I don't need to necessarily try and find a partner, because if I seek a partner, I'm usually the seeking is usually a sign that I'm allowing my unworthiness or me being not enough to guide how I'm relating to people, because we only try and find another person when we don't feel enough as we are. And so with that, can we build community, and can we practice having good boundaries with people we're really freaking attracted to, that we know wouldn't work in a romantic relationship? And the only way you're going to know it's not going to work in a romantic relationship is getting to know that person, right? And so when we're willing to build friendships rather than constantly chasing our next romantic partner is actually what helps us have the discernment, right? When we slowly get to know people and say, I'm not going to try constantly project my expectations of a partner onto this person, but I'm just going to get to know this person, and majority of the people you meet just feel like another person, right? They don't feel like, even people you meet really hot, that are really hot, you might feel a little nervous, but you actually don't feel any different from any other person you meet. And it's because that person's just meant to be a friend. And recognizing, when I take the time to slowly get to know that person, I start to see why the universe intended us for us to be friends. And I start to wake up from my fantasies about life as a buffet, and let me just go and date and fuck every hot person that I meet. And when we're building community, one of the most important things of community is repair. And when we're willing to titrate our relationships of, there was a little rupture, let me have a conversation with this person, or let me give it a little space and then have a conversation, or this person isn't someone I really want a deeper relationship with, and it doesn't feel like I really need to address it with them, or they couldn't handle it. It's like, okay, but it doesn't mean I can't still spend time with that person every now and then, or get to know that person, or hang out with that person, right? And that's embodying unconditional love, is like, even people who go, I feel like that person isn't someone I want to see every week, doesn't mean you can't go have an enjoyable conversation with them over dinner. Doesn't mean that you can't make small talk with them at community events. Doesn't mean that you couldn't even hang out with them every now and then, as a way of sharing your presence, your love with those around you, which is what the world needs. The world needs light workers to get off their meditation, self-absorption, or get off their spiritual, I'm better than everyone else because I'm spiritual, and start to really connect with others. And you're going to do that a lot better when you're oriented towards building community rather than searching for romantic partners. And you're going to do that a lot better when you can forgive people and go, okay, let me touch this vengefulness and spitefulness. Maybe let me turn it into art, or do something that makes me feel really good and helps pull me out of it after I touch it or feel it for an hour or two. And then can I lead with, I'm willing to give this person a second chance. I'm willing to orient towards repair. I'm willing to embody compassion rather than just saying, I'm compassionate, because really, are you living it? Or do you just say that? Right? Are you really someone that's standing for healing for not only yourself or others? Or are you saying you stand for healing while setting really sharp boundaries and never giving anyone and never giving someone a conversation why, and really allowing your pain to run how you set boundaries rather than consciousness, awareness, and love? And so forgiveness is about loving others, and it's about loving others so deeply that I start to treat others how I would want to be talked to, how I would want to receive boundaries, and I start to be more curious about who people are and really getting to know people more so than trying to protect myself, because you only feel like you need to protect yourselves when you haven't found the depth it takes to get to know yourself and then to get to know others. And there was one point I wanted to hit, and we'll see if it comes to me, that even if someone, here it is, even if someone handles a conversation poorly, right, were they responding from a trigger, or are they just someone that is emotionally dysregulated all the time and isn't good at handling basic communication, right? And you know the difference by getting to know that person. Because people are going to get triggered and handle a repair conversation poorly sometimes. That's also a possibility. But it's like, okay, can I give people second chances, right? Can I look at how they've acted, like what's the history we have, and are they someone that embodies presence and love and we have a lot of beautiful memories together? Are they someone that's dysregulated and handles basic communication really bad and is always in denial of what they do wrong? When I'm trying to say, hey, that was hurtful. Those are two different type of people, and we only know the difference by getting to know people. And I think that's really what I want to leave this conversation with, is if you get to know someone, you always know who they are, and you always know what the relationship calls for. And can you prioritize, rather than hanging out with people based off convenience, can I prioritize, I make more time for the people that light me up and excite me the most, and I make less time for people that do that less. And even if I haven't found the people that light me up and excite me the most yet, and I'm just hanging out with people based off convenience because I don't think there's anyone else better out there, or I haven't found them yet, it's like, okay, that's great, but could you hang out with that person less and go do new things that you typically don't do, where you can meet new people, like go do an ecstatic dance, or go to a pickleball like place and go play pickleball with a bunch of new people that you never met before, and work to find some community events where you can meet new people who might light you up and excite you more, rather than constantly hanging out with people that don't always really fill you up with excitement or joy, or leaving you always feeling the best. And so I hope this helps. Thank you for listening, and have a great day.